Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm really glad you could be here. So today we're diving into something I'm really passionate about. As a matter of fact, those people that follow me the most know I've talked about how smart of a place this could be to be able to get into business-wise. And it really comes down to land investing and what you can do with it. And I personally made a ton of money in this space, but not even scratched the surface of what can be done if you have the right strategies, which honestly, I didn't. And with us today to teach us the right way to do it is Dan Haberkost. Now, at the age of 25, Dan has managed to build an impressive real estate business and portfolio that allows him the freedom to live and work where he wants while spending a tremendous amount of time in the mountains and on the beach. Now, Dan's first foray into the world of real estate investing was as a teenager when he managed a portfolio of properties for his employer at the time while still in high school. Now, Dan took the lessons he learned from these early experiences and brought them into his own business, allowing him to shorten the learning curve and make an enormous amount of progress in just a few years, which has given him complete freedom, even in his mid-20s. Man, Dan, I'm excited you could be here today.
Ty, yeah, thanks for that introduction. I'm excited to talk a bit about land, rentals, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, I love to talk about land, especially because I love it. I mean, I got to tell you, we're at 600 something episodes on the podcast. There's only two guests I've ever had on that I'm like, oh, I love that thing. Yeah. And then I went and got into that thing. And one of those two things was land. And it was just the coolest thing. I made a lot of money. Yeah. Let me ask you this. What got you into it? Because, you know, as I know that there's not a lot of people in this space. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine that the real estate tools you had when you were in high school probably wasn't even to do with land, or was it? Give me some insight there.
No. So when I was in high school, I grew up in Ohio and, pretty built out over on that side of the country. It wasn't until I moved to Colorado that I really became even aware of the prospect of going after land. And it really came about because, I heard all the podcasts, low and no money down, passive income, and bought a couple rentals. So by the time I moved here, I was on rental number 2. And it became really clear to me that I needed to figure out how to make a substantial income if I wanted to scale a portfolio of rental properties. Plus, I couldn't work for someone else. So anyways, at the local real estate club here in Colorado Springs, I met a guy who had spent the last 40 years building houses, apartments, buying and selling land, all kinds of development you could think of all over the West Coast. And he and I became friends. I would drive an hour south of where I live every weekend and go work with him and just kind of learn from him. And eventually I just picked it up and started doing what he was doing. And that was really my first intro into land, just through a mentor.
So what got you interested? What was it that stood out? Because you and I both know, wow, in real estate investing, right? There's just so many different ways you go, from apartments to fix and flip to, Airbnb, all these. So what makes you go down the road of land?
More than anything, it was just the availability of somebody who had done it his whole life right there, who was willing to teach me in exchange for some work. So, if I had met him and he was, focused in commercial, triple net properties, that's probably where I would have went. It was more just availability. You can make money in all these avenues. You just got to pick one and get good at it.
Interesting. So when it comes to land, kind of give me an overview. Like, what's your strategy when you get into investing in land?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because there's a couple different niches here, and most of the land courses and people who I hear talking about land focus on acreage, rural acreage, or undeveloped land. And I don't do anything with that. In fact, I think the largest parcel I've ever bought was 1.6 acres. Everything I do already has all the upfront work put into it in order to zone it, bring in utilities, get it ready to be built on. And so I'm targeting infill, shovel-ready lots where, again, water, sewer, power, gas are all right there. Zoning and entitlements are done, and you could go and get your permit right away. So that is the niche I'm focused in. And I really like that niche because really it's set up a lot like if you think of a traditional, what people call wholesaler with existing residential housing stock, right? They get their marketing going, they flip some of them, they assign some of them, and they keep some of them. Well, for me, it's the same sort of system, but for land. And then I assign some of them, buy and sell some of them on terms, and then build on the best ones. And so it's become really an excellent avenue for producing income that can then be put into buy and hold rentals.
Very different than what I did. What I did was just buy literally barren in the middle of the desert, none of the things you're describing, and then sold it on terms way more difficult to sell than what you're doing. And I want to talk more about that. So first of all, why is this land even available? I mean, it sounds to me like somebody's going to buy a lot of land and then do the things, build basically, I don't want to call it utilities. What's the proper term? For
just develop the land, the development.
So somebody that buys the land and develops the land, I would think they're developing it for a house. They're a developer. Like, why would somebody buy land, develop it, and then just go around and sell it?
Oh, no, that's a great question. And that alone can be extremely profitable because you're adding a lot of value to the land itself. And so, I know a guy or a friend of mine doing this out east of Denver, and he doubled his money. He took $1 million and turned it into $2 million in the course of 13 months. So that can be a really profitable niche, and that's a way to go. It's just not what I've done because I know how to build, and I like to have that land that's ready to go. So actually all of the areas where I found success, they were subdivisions where some developer took that huge piece of raw land, did all the development work, and for whatever reason, it ended up failing, where they didn't get most of it sold and it didn't get built out. In one instance, one of the markets I'm in, he went broke and had to give it all over to the local municipality. So there's a million reasons, whether it was a recession or a personal issue with the original developer, where these big subdivisions have just been kind of sitting for a long time, and more recently have started to get built out as the housing shortage has kind of swept across the country and people have gotten pushed out to these areas. So there's a lot of different reasons, but just like any sort of distress within real estate, right, there was some situation that led to that original person not getting the whole thing sold off or built out.
So I'm interested, and I know that you live in Colorado and you were just talking about buying some stuff here in Florida. How do you find the land? How do you even know where land's available to be able to buy?
Yeah, it's been a mix. So some of it I have gotten via just word of mouth from friends who are in the business, like, hey, here's such and such place. I think it fits what you're looking for. And then honestly, it's as simple as I'll go on Zillow when I want to find a new area. And I think, okay, right now there's a mass migration in the country, right? Moving to the Southeast, over to the Sun Belt. A lot of people leaving the Northeast, leaving California, leaving the Midwest. And so if you go to those states, find the major metros that are exploding, say Denver, for example, and look at the second or third level markets outside of them. I'll pull up Zillow. I'll go solds, and then I'll go new houses for 2021, built 2021 or newer. And then I'll look for clusters of yellow dots, because where you find those, you'll find subdivisions with infill lots where there's lots of builders and end users who want those lots. And from a high level, it's really that simple as far as getting started, making sure you're somewhere where people are moving, like Florida or Colorado, and you don't really want to go into Denver or Austin, Texas, or the major metro. It's not going to work so well to get land at 40 or 50 cents on the dollar there. But again, those second or third level markets where people are getting pushed to tend to be very lucrative.
Okay. So Florida's obviously a state a lot of people are moving to, especially with COVID, right? Pretty lax requirements down here during COVID. And that being said, now I know Florida's a good market. So I go to look at Florida, and I might look at Zillow and find the dots that you're indicating or neighborhoods. Still, no way to know like if available land is there. So like, how do you drill that down even further to even begin to figure out like where the actual available plots of land are, and then even know like who owns the land to be able to go and contact to talk about buying it?
Sure. So when you zoom in, you see, okay, here's a bunch of new builds in this area. Well, you switch it to land, see what sort of land's for sale. And if you click on dot after dot and you see, oh, they're all a quarter acre. It's the same thing over and over and over again. That's kind of the beauty of these subdivisions. Going after the type of land you mentioned, it varies, and there's a lot of due diligence and is it big enough to drill a well, or can I put a septic? Or in these subdivisions that I'm in, it's the same thing thousands of times over and over and over again. And so I'll look at the land for sale, look at recent solds. Okay, are they consistently selling in a certain price range? Are they consistent size? Well, great. Then I use PropStream, and you can go on PropStream. And the thing I always like to check for right off the bat is where or how many owners are there that bought the land decades ago and don't live there, because those were people that probably intended to buy the lot, build a house, in Florida, Colorado, whatever. And for whatever reason, life got in the way and it just never happened. Many of them probably passed on, which again, with that land leaves an opportunity. So I'll go on PropStream, I'll look in the area I'm interested in, I'll just see, well, how many people have owned, 20 plus years or maybe even 30 plus years who live out of state? Because for those people, it's probably a sunk cost in their mind that's just a pain in the butt paying the taxes every year. So that's kind of where I go from there.
Then I imagine you just, once you figure that out, just reach out to them probably by a letter and just say, hey, I'm interested.
Yeah. Great question. Yes. So marketing goes a couple different ways. I have a buddy who owns a marketing company, sends out handwritten mailers that then have just a straightforward offer right in the mailer. And then I alternate that once I found a good place that's producing a good market with postcards. And then I have several people cold calling as well.
Interesting. Do you make a specific offer to buy their land, or are you just telling them you're generally interested?
No, always there's an offer, whether if it's on a postcard, a letter, or even a cold caller, they get right to, hey, we've been purchasing lots around X. Any interest in selling? Very straightforward.
So how do you figure that out? How do you figure out the best price to offer? Is it through this research process? You're kind of, like you mentioned earlier, you're finding the go price or what they're selling for. Is that what you do, and just kind of a little bit less, or what's your formula there?
Yeah, well, again, the type of land I'm targeting works far better for this sort of thing because you have thousands of lots that tend to be very similar, same zoning, utility situation, size, topography. So I usually start in a new market at 30 or 40 cents on the dollar and just see what sort of response we get.
So if your response isn't good, you raise it. If the response is overwhelming, you lower the offer on the rest of the land you're submitting it to.
Exactly.
Is there a way to do it without the manual research? Like you're talking about getting the land, and it's a lot of investigative stuff for one at a time. Do you have like VAs do research to compile lists? Because it seems to me like mailing out, like when I used to do land investment, we would just send these letters, right? And it would all automatic. I mean, we'd put the list in, the list would populate the letters to send the letters for us. It was really nice. But and it had to have a list to input to even be able to do that. So it's the same thing here. Like, you compiling a list, or are you doing this one by one with sending out?
Oh, no, just pulling lists on PropStream. So I'll draw the area I want, 10 plus years owned, out of state, out of county, not on the MLS, and then send it over to my mail house. They mark it. They send all the letters out.
And then what do you do next? I mean, let's say somebody responds and I say, hey man, I've got this piece of land. My grandpa owned it and he gave it to me, and I don't use it. I haven't done anything with it. I got to pay taxes on it every year. It's kind of a nuisance. I saw your offer, we negotiate back and forth a little. You say, I agree to sell it to you. What's the next stages? What's that process of buying the land look like?
Yeah. I've gotten this far more fine-tuned over the years here. So I have all acquisitions managers doing it. I don't do any of that anymore. The very first thing they do, we have a frequently asked question for selling the land. We send that over to them, title agent, contact info, the process spelled out, all of that. If it's a lot where it's an area we know really well, they'll just put it under contract immediately, send the DocuSign over to the seller. Once it's signed, they'll send it to the title agent with the seller CC'd, say, hey, such and such title agent CC'd on this is the seller. We're going to buy this. We're planning to close at such and such time. Granted, that's not always the case. Sometimes there's more due diligence being needed. In that case, I have actually another frequently asked question that my acquisitions manager send that kind of walks through, hey, what are we going to do from here? Talks through due diligence. It says, hey, in the meantime, if you want to verify us, verify that we're legitimate, here's our title agent, here's our website. Feel free to reach out, look us up, so on and so forth. Then she goes and maybe we have to verify utilities or make sure, it's flat and level, or there's always all kinds of nuances and subtleties of different markets and different areas in the country, but she'll go and do that. Assuming it works, then she comes back, puts it under contract, and then proceeds with the process as discussed.
Yeah. So you have a due diligence process you follow to make sure there's no liens against the land, all of that kind of stuff.
So I don't worry about that because we do go through a title company, and, if there's something from years ago, they get that in the title search. I mean, if there's back taxes, she'll see that right away on the assessor site. But other than that, I don't go too deep into that because, again, just getting control of the lot, putting under contract is kind of essential, as with any sort of real estate.
So when you go through and you do something like this, the next thing is that how do you get the money to buy it? I mean, what I found about buying land is it's super cash intensive, man. I mean, from what I went through, I had to put all the money in up front. and quarter acre plots down here. I'm interested to see what you're buying for, because down here, I think a quarter acre plot's 25 grand, something to that effect. And you can't get financing for it that I found. Like, a lot of lenders don't want to lend on land. So like, what do you do? What do you go through to even get the cash to be able to invest in the land? Because you don't get a rate of return, I'd imagine, for a period of time either.
Well, the velocity here is pretty significant, because usually we're having these sold immediately, and we're closing within a month or two, sometimes 3. But at this point, I just use my own cash. However, when I was getting started, when I didn't have as much of my own, I found investors. I got a line of credit through a commercial bank. There was a hard money lender I found that would do land with a small amount down, assuming I was buying it at a discount. So right now, especially, you got to look around. There's lots of cash out there. Plenty of people just having cash sitting in their bank. I had a lady I know give me a non-collateral percent chunk of cash, right? I just paid her every month on that. So that initially is just developing relationships with investors. Again, at this point, it's using my own funds, but yeah, there's lots of places to go find cash.
Do you have, like, in your model, do you stay at a certain price of purchase? Because, as and I both know, I mean, land's all over the place. You can buy it for millions. You could buy it for, hundreds of dollars. So do you have like a sweet spot that you find of what you like to spend?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been in the 10 to 16, 17 range. But right now, actually, I have a bit of marketing going out in the next week to an area where the retail value is, 200 to 400 grand. And so if I get anything there, it's going to have to be either assignment, double close, or I don't want to put that much risk. So I'll probably bring in an investor when we get deals there.
So if you're buying a piece of land for, let's say, 15 grand, what you say buy 30 cents on the dollar, 30, 40 cents. So are you expecting to get the dollar? Like, what are you selling it for then?
We've been doing a mix, and we're in transition, because in my primary market, I got a huge kick in the teeth in January, where they just completely shut down new builds and new water taps without any warning, without anything. So it's been an interesting year. So before that, it was very consistently, I'd buy at 14 to 16 and sell at 30 to 34. Really consistent. Now, long story short, they opened that market back up. Still have a few builds going there, still flipping some land, but it's slowing down a bit. I'm just slowly getting out of there as far as the land flipping, because I'm not sure what the future holds. So things are a little bit more up in the air. We have 2 closing tomorrow where we made, I want to say, 24 on assignments. We had them under contract at 11 and then assigned each of them for 12, right? And so that's an example, but it's hard to give you a norm right now because we're in transition. So to different.
So historically, roughly, you spend 15 grand, you make 25, or you sell for 25.
Usually a bit more than that, but after all expenses, sure, let's call it
Just
that.
Making super concerned, right? I mean, you're making double your money and then some. You might buy it for 15, sell it for 30. Obviously, nobody here listening or watching this should pay any attention to these numbers, because it's all over the board. Like, I'm literally, I buy 10 acres in the middle of the desert for $1,200. I can buy a quarter acre here for 20 grand, right? It's all over the place. Mm-hmm. But just trying to get an idea. I mean, you can easily get into this and double your money at whatever price point you are. If you have someone like you training you and you have the insight to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And then it's very synergistic with the builds too. I sell some on notes, so we have the note payments coming every month, and then the flips of land, and then just the builds are big chunks, a couple times or every several months.
Which I guess is my next question. How do you sell it? Who do you sell it to?
The land itself.
The land itself. You buy the land and you got a deal. You bought it for 15. We got it for 15. We closed. Now I own the land. Well, I imagine before I even close, you're trying to sell it. So when you're in the process, you got a piece of land. What process do you start to sell that land?
So I go the route, my acquisitions managers, because land is so much simpler. When I talk to people who are doing houses or apartments, the acquisitions managers have a lot more to do, because there's so much due diligence, and that is so much less the case with land, especially in the markets that we know. I'm not exaggerating when I say it takes about 30 seconds to know if it's a deal and what we're buying it at. 30 seconds. And so I have them do dispo as well. And we build our lists, and we know, okay, such and such builder, so it's usually builders, is looking for, lots zoned this in this area or that area, whatever. And so we'll send them out ahead of time. Hey, Ty, we have this lot coming up. If we close on it, we're going to list it full market value on the MLS. If you want it, we'll give you a little discount. We can just assign it to you. Now I have them go that route. And yeah, it's just a matter of pulling lists. What I do, two things. I pull lists of recently sold lots in the area we're buying, and only of owners that have 2 or 3 or 4 plus lots, and who bought it for cash. And then usually you just get builders. So I'll have my acquisitions managers cold call them. And then I'll also just have them go on Google, pull up builders and call them. Hey, who's your acquisitions person? What are you guys looking for? And then we have the, kind of working backwards. You already have your buyer, you know what they're looking for. And that, especially when you're going into new markets and there's uncertainty, that is a great way to approach it. So you already know, oh, hey, I have such and such that'll buy land in this area at X price. So that's kind of how you work that backwards.
And when you do that, you're buying to builders. I would imagine they're not interested in paying retail for the land, right?
You would be amazed. Most builders have no clue about how to invest or buy anything low. And I mean, at least in the markets I'm in, if you go to downtown Denver or Austin, it might be different. But in these smaller tertiary markets, a lot of them pay retail or close to retail.
That's interesting. And then they're giving you cash. They're doing a close. You make your money. You move on. You mentioned some other ways too. So is there other ways other than builders that are the other people other than builders are buying the land?
Yeah, every now and then, especially when I was getting started and was a little bit lower on capital, I was selling at probably a lower value relative to retail to other investors who just didn't know how to go direct to seller themselves. And then, I pay for land.com, and then with Facebook and Craigslist, you'll just get retail buyers every now and then from those sites as well. And I do list them sometimes as well, because especially in the market here in Colorado that I was doing very well in, there was a certain section of town where it was always the end user that would buy it, and they'd pay full premium, or they pay a premium for it. So I would just list it in those areas.
Do you have a licensed real estate license to be able to list on MLS?
Oh, no, I just have a couple different realtors I've used.
So you list the land through them on MLS, pay them a commission, et cetera.
Yep.
So what's a closing process? How long does it take to close on a piece of land, whether you're selling it or whether you're the one buying it?
I mean, that really depends on what you want to do. If we know we want it and they're in a hurry, we can close in a couple of days, assuming the title company is willing and able. They can get the title commitment back and set up the closing. It can be 3-4 days, or it could be 60 days. Sometimes people aren't in a hurry and maybe they want a higher price, so we'll go the route of assigning and we'll put under contract for 60 days.
You have a lot of resources online that help people through this process, from YouTube and videos, from an academy. The reason for that is because there's a million pitfalls. I mean, we make it sound easy here, just a quick Q&A, but there's a million pitfalls. I know being through it, being through it. So what are some of these roadblocks, these pitfalls that people find into that are like, oh, that guy, Dan sounded brilliant on Ty's podcast, I'm going to go do this. And then they're like, oh crap. Like what are the oh crap places that people get stuck?
That's a great question. So to give an example, there was a market here in Colorado where it was bizarre, but the utility lines would stop seemingly for no reason, no rhyme or reason. There would be a water line, but no sewer, and far too small to allow for a septic. So making sure, triple checking that the utilities are there and it is a buildable lot. Many people don't realize that for whatever reason, some markets have utility lines that just stop. I've seen it multiple times. Another thing, some markets have land subdivided and platted to the point of it being too small to put a house on it unless you have multiple lots side by side. So if you go to your county zoning code, there are setbacks. So for example, like where I'm building houses right now, I got to have 5 feet on each side minimum and 15 foot total. So if the lot is too skinny to put the house I want to put there, that's a problem. Or in some cases, and there's another market with the same zoning code where a lot of lots can't even accommodate a house. So knowing utilities, setbacks, and making sure at the end of the day that whoever ends up with that lot can put a house on it is really important. Other than that, just looking out for the lemons due to topography and soil conditions. So great example of this, early on, there was a couple lots I put under contract and awesome views, great area. It looked fantastic. I thought these were going to be just killer deals. But one of the main buyers that I had sold to at the time goes over there and he goes, oh no, did you see next door? And no, I hadn't gone by in person. Next door had just had a soils test done. And there were these massive piles of shale, which is a rock that is extremely hard and expensive to excavate. And so he's like, man, those are killer views, but the excavation is just too much. I don't want them. And so that was a big problem. So every market has its own nuances and things to run into regarding all of what I just listed, right? You know, if that happens to be the lot that has a huge mound in the middle or a crazy slope, that can be a problem. You know, as I learn about Florida, you know, we have a lack of water out here in Florida. You guys have flood zones and got to learn about that. So you need to really approach it when you're approaching a market by finding a subject matter expert and talking to them. I can't stress this enough. In any business, in anything I do, I will never go learn it myself again the hard way. I'm going to find someone and learn from them. And just like with whether it's rentals or commercial real estate or land, you should do the same. And especially when approaching new markets, because you don't know what you don't know. But those people that have been there for decades doing business certainly do.
What if I have the money to invest, but I want to learn? Like, do you have a program where somebody can come to you with the cash, get a return on what they're doing, and just invest without having to do any of the work?
I do not have anything like that because I'm not short on cash right now. But you know, if someone's interested in investing as I expand into this more expensive market, I certainly will. So it's worth reaching out if someone wanted to talk about that. I guess I do not have a program set up as of right now.
If you do, it was my idea. I want to override or some kind of percentage. I just want to say that.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Fair enough.
So, well, then what does the course look like? You have to have training that helps people through this process with a step by step. I think. What does that look like? If I want to come to you and I say, Dan, look, this is fantastic. Which, by the way, it's fantastic. I've invested in land. I love it. I have nothing bad to say about it. It was as exhilarating and as awesome as I always thought it could be. And I didn't even get to do the fun stuff you're doing. Like, you're doing way fun stuff. I was literally buying desert land, and like you're doing this way more fun. So it's cool. I want to do this, but I don't even know where to get started. I want to come to you. What's that look like to work with you to help me through this? Or do you have a way to do
that? Just that's a great question. So I don't know if you've ever interviewed Brent Bowers or you know him, but he had a big land course, and he's a friend of mine because he lived in Colorado Springs and we hosted the real estate club together for years before he moved. He had a land course for years and years, and all of his students were asking him, how do I build? How do I build? How do I build? And he didn't have as much experience with that, but I did because I spent now 4 years with that guy I was telling you about, learning from him, who's been doing it for the last 40. So he and I just collaborated, and we released a system from beginning to end of not only how to identify the markets and find the land and start flipping the land, but then also how to build on it and then make it a repeatable and passive system. And that's ibuildfreedom.com. But we just got that launched. I wasn't even sure if we're going to talk about that, but I am excited about it because we made that for our younger version of ourselves. It's for someone that has motivation, but needs a system, that needs a clear system to execute. And that's what that is from beginning to end. It's our business model on paper. So anyways, yeah, that would be where to go. And that'll teach you both the identifying and flipping of the land and just creating a land business, but then also how to build on it and make that part of the business go as well.
Cool. I love that you've come on with us today and shared. I love what you do. I think it's so cool. I love land investing. I love it for so many reasons. You have to deal with all the nonsense of owning real estate, all the stuff that can go wrong. Very little competition. It's still shocking how few people are even in the industry.
I know. Yeah.
And you can still make you money. I mean, down in Florida, you can't make jack on properties right now because I mean, it's so expensive to buy them. But you can buy land and still get great deals on it and still like double plus. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, land, I think what you do is brilliant. I mean, I made a lot of money at it, and I kudos to you for doing what you've done at the age you have and teaching other people to do it.
Yeah. Thank you. I remember reading about a concept years ago, the efficient market hypothesis in the world of equities. Did you ever read about that? You know, how they talk about. Yeah, okay. Well, land is the opposite of that. It is the grossly inefficient market because people don't understand it. There's not many people in it. So price does not approach intrinsic value. Prices are all over the place, and you can buy it as a discount, as opposed to, you know, in the example of real estate, residential housing right now would be far more efficient, where it's very, very difficult to buy at a discount.
Very true. Yeah,
That's how.
and it's in limited supply, right? I mean, there's only so much land available. So if you, especially if you're following your strategy and going to areas like Florida where it's just insane, and I'm in these conversations with my friends all the time, right? Is what do I do? I buy, it's so expensive. I'm gonna buy land and build. And I mean, I can't tell you how many of my circle goes down that road of building now because it's so expensive. Or they want to buy the land now and sit on it till the cost of goods goes down, the materials, and then build. But either way, a lot of my friends that are, that have the money to spend, they're going down the road that you're down, not of investing in what you are, but in buying land versus property, because it's so outrageous here. So
Yep. No, I'll be down there actually next month talking to some contractors, some builds going down there too. So yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on this today. Where can everybody else go besides ibuildfreedom.com to learn more?
Yeah, just you can hit me up on social media, Instagram or Facebook, Dan Haberkost.
Okay. Dan, thanks for coming on with us today.
Thanks, Ty. It was fun.
All right. So listen, if you're watching this, listening to this, I can't tell you how smart of a thing this is. Like I said, 600 plus episodes, and I own a business. We've helped 50,000 business owners get capital. So literally, without exaggeration, tens of thousands of concepts have come across my desk per se over the last 10 plus years. And I got to tell you, everything I've ever even heard about, this is one of the smartest things I've ever heard, because it is so brilliant for so many reasons. You can make really high returns. There's not a lot of competition. Here's the catch. It's not easy. And that's why I love it. I love really complicated stuff because not a lot of people have the ambition to go and jump into it. But if you have a guide, if you have a step-by-step system to succeed, that's the key to success. It worked for me. I made a ton of money on it because I had a step-by-step system, but not at this level. What was being talking about here today with Dan of buying these lots that are already set up, he's buying lots that have the highest demand, and yet he's dealing with customers who don't even begin to understand how to value it, what to buy. I mean, he is in the perfect situation. So if you want to learn how to do this, learn more from Dan, the experiences he's having, the success he's having along the way, there's two things you should do. First of all, you want to go right to Dan's website. I'm pretty sure Dan has his links to his social media pages here. Dan, on your website?
No, not social media on there. That's more just a book a call, but I can send you those.
If you want to book a call with Dan, I'm going to put the social media pages right, or the links right in the show resources page. You can also just do a search on social. Dan Haberkost. That's Haberkost. So you can search Dan's name, connect with him on social. You can also go to his website, which is danhaberkost.com, just to schedule a call with him. If you're interested in talking more, if you're interested in getting into this, a lot of things you could do there. And then you also want to go to ibuildfreedom.com. ibuildfreedom.com is like two of the top guys in this industry that come together and build a step-by-step system, not just to do half of what we talked about today, but actually build on it and create recurring income in a whole other deeper level of the system. And you can only get into that and get the insight there from visiting ibuildfreedom.com. So make sure you follow Dan on social media. Make sure you visit ibuildfreedom.com as well, and really consider jumping into this because it's a great time and it's a great industry to be in. So make sure you check out those resources.